good morning, good afternoon, good night, and welcome to the Back to Business podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Annis, and once again, I have two familiar faces, Shia Baum, Mike Kasab. You're going to get sick of us
Right?
eventually, but hopefully not yet.
Yeah, when do we make the cut to co-host? Yeah, seriously.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that. You guys are definitely not at that level yet. I respect the confidence, but simmer down over there. No, you're right.
Mike,
Well, I'll
Mike,
talk to,
that's her opening offer. She learned how to negotiate.
I did. I'm a big negotiator. So anyways, how's it going, you guys? How's your week going?
Everything
Yeah.
good. Happy to be here.
Hey,
Mike?
how's your week, Sarah?
Well, we're doing okay. No, you know what I said earlier on a meeting? When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I was really selling it hard because I feel like that most days, especially when we're podcasting.
I
Tell us,
like.
tell
I
us
feel
about the days that you don't.
No, we don't have to talk about that.
I've been feeling the
Uh,
opposite. I feel like I love what I do so much that it feels like really hard work now.
okay. So you've just gone like past that threshold of not working to working like way too hard because it's so great.
And
Yeah,
somehow it was
yeah.
me.
You aim for perfection, so you just want to keep making it better and better. I guess like I love my kids, right? But it's hard work to make them, be good contributing members of society. And that's just at 2 years.
Oh, wow. Most parents are working on much more fundamental things at 2, but you're like, you need to be contributing to society.
Mike's
Start 'em
Mike's
young.
just, Mike's just trying to make sure that he deals with all the issues now because I can't wait for them to be teenagers. I'm going to make his life hell. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, it's okay. We got it figured out.
I
China's
would
got
expect
bullied,
nothing
so
less.
he if he does anything, I'll just send makeup kits to his sons, and if Shia has a fit, I'll remind him that the year is probably going to be 2032 or 2035, and that he shouldn't be a bigot and think like that.
Just you wait. Mike's child is getting a Ferrari for her 16th birthday.
Amazing.
Good
So
job.
generous. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Happy we can all meet again and talk about what's going on in personal lives in the world. Some exciting new news topics to kind of dive into. Oh, something that's been raising some conversation recently is driver monitoring in cars. So by 2027, the goal for new cars sold in the United States would be to include driver monitoring systems that are tracking your attention. So if your eyes start to drift from the road, it's going to give you an alert. I know a lot of cars already do that, but then it raises the question, is this more surveillance? Is this safety? Where do you draw that line?
Yeah. I currently drive a car that does have that. Um, and I like it, but at the same time, like I think it's still in the baby stages right now. So it still says that drowsiness, indicating drowsiness or whatever the alert is when I'm perfectly normal, which makes me think like I have a problem, like droopy eyes when I'm driving. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, it's gonna probably get a lot better. But if I am drunk and I'm driving and the car says, "Hey, you're drunk and you're driving," if I'm drunk, I already don't care at this point. So like, thank you for caring, but now what? So yeah, I think it is going to be very. Not that I'm promoting drinking and driving. I'm just saying if anyone's already at that point,
This
uh,
is just a hypothetical. This has never
yeah,
happened.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Allegedly.
I need to be like Shia and get a driver so that I never have to deal with that. Uh, but yeah, at what point does it become Big Brother? You know, is it going to stop and pull over to the side of the road because it's indicating that I'm at a certain level of intoxication or tiredness or whatever, or is it just an alert that says, hey, this is what's going on? So they're tiptoeing the line of what they can and get away with, can and can't get away with. I don't know. What do you think, Shai?
So I think that I think it's twofold. First, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in a Waymo before. So if you go to West
No,
Coast, like, okay,
very
so
intrigued by them.
the first time I took a Waymo, I was scared out of my mind. And about 3 minutes in, I realized that this is the safest way to ever get from point A to B. The car is just so much better than a human. It's mind blowing. I mean, it could see through buildings because it's taking feeds from other Waymos that are like blocks away. And obviously, it's able to process data much faster, right? So, what happens is you're looking at a screen and you're seeing a guy walking a dog through like a 40-story building around the corner. And it senses the speed of the guy walking and it's making calculations that humans just would never be able to process. So, I think from a safety perspective, there's no question that the cat's out of the bag. Like it's over. We are going to all be in like our children's generation will never get behind the wheel of a car. I firmly believe that. Like, that's already done. From a kind of like intrusiveness and surveillance perspective, right? It opens up like a whole nother can of worms. There's no question that I don't know if you guys, we talked on the last episode about what's going on in Iran. One of the rumors out there is that the Israelis and the Americans had hacked into these street cameras across Tehran, and that's how they've been tracking the movements of all the heads of the IRGC and the Ayatollahs, and that's how they knew where everybody was at any given time. And I think it opens up a lot of risks to adversaries, but I don't see it stopping. I don't think there's anything that's going to stop this train. I think at this point, it's just a function of how much can we put a shield around it to protect it from the safety perspective. And like all technology, right? We come up with the shield. Bad actors are going to try and get through it and come up with the plug. It's a cat and the mouse. I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And also, just on a personal level, I'm okay with technology like protecting me. But with my experience with ChatGPT and just with technology in general, I feel a different way about technology judging me. Even though it's not a real person judging you, right? But the judgment is still there. It's kind of more, uh, probably more than if Sarah were to judge me for drinking and driving.
Well, which is strange because you're like
Well,
next to your conspiracy theory, right? So I feel like all of this technology is really going to get to you. I mean, if your car ever stops, what's the first thing that's going to pop into your head? Like, if it stops, who are you blaming first?
I'll blame it first.
No, I know. I'm just curious. Like, who would you blame first?
Can't think of
come
anyone.
on, come on, Mike.
We're not there yet. It's only episode 3.
We're not there yet.
But everyone who's watching, if you thought it didn't watch.
You are Mike's people.
Yeah, and that's the underlying issue with social media. I mean, you get anyone to believe anything, right? And that's really why Mike and I have tentative brothers to prevent people like him from having conspiracy theories that aren't based in reality.
Yeah,
But really, where's all this data going, right? So, like, sure, the the computer it knows all this stuff, but eventually someone has that data. Going to what you said, is it in the hands of the good guys or the bad guys?
I agree.
And
No,
that's
I
the problem.
agree.
well,
I
but
think, but I think people give like governments in general almost too much credit sometimes. It's like, yes, there's all this data out there, and yes, technically people can do a lot of bad things, and they do. There's no question about it, and you need to prevent that. But I also think that like we give people too much credit when we assume that just because something bad happens, there's an individual sitting behind a keyboard somewhere actually causing it to happen. Like I was in Texas, I think it was Texas or San Francisco. I don't remember. I was waiting for a Waymo, and the guy who had ordered the Waymo before me was sitting there. He couldn't get the door open, and like the app just wasn't working. And the Waymo's sitting there, and he's screaming at this car. There's no one in it. And like he's literally, and he's just going nuts. You have to put in like it senses your phone, and whatever reason it malfunctioned, right? And he's just going off, blaming. I mean, everybody and their mother. Jaguar built the car. Google has the thing. They all suck. And it's like, okay, it also could just be a glitch in your app, or like, maybe your phone's not, I mean, maybe the Bluetooth connection broke, like turn it off and on. Like a lot of times there are like simple solutions, but people are really quick to come up with big conspiracies.
for sure. But to Mike's point with the data, my mind goes to insurance companies getting the data and then saying, you're not an insurable driver because your attention, goes off of the road 90% of the time. And, therefore, or whatever the case may be. And then it's, is that all accurate data? And
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Is that unfair? Meaning, should safe drivers pay less because they are going to focus more? Whereas people are unsafe, looking at their phones or being distracted, who are causing most of the accidents, should they pay more because the risk profile changes? Like for someone like me who drives like an old lady in the right lane, right? You know, I feel like my risk profile is different than the guy going 80, blowing by me, weaving in and out of traffic. And should I be paying more because, there's a much higher probability of him getting into an accident?
so for someone like you, this would be helpful, of
Well,
course.
yeah,
For
I mean,
someone
I'm
who's,
playing devil's advocate. I'm saying like
yeah,
and maybe it's you opt into it if you are a safe driver, and maybe it's not that they have access to it. Maybe I think like Progressive has something where you plug it into your car or something like that, where it's optional. And if you don't have hard braking or various different factors speeding, it automatically reduces your rate.
yeah,
Makes sense. I mean, Sarah, you see it like in the trucking company, right? Over a period of time, when drivers tend to be safe, you have less severe speeding incidents, less hours of service, less, changing lanes. You also, over extended period of time, of course, you have one-offs that, you have accidents and things happen, but over a
sure,
period of time, you start to see less accidents, which means your insurance rates come down, which means the cost of goods going to the end user ends up, being reduced. Like there are also some positives to having data if used correctly.
for sure. Yeah, you guys are thinking like big scheme. What's the government doing with it? I'm like, what is my insurance company thinking about this data that you're collecting? So, but it goes both ways to your point. So it could be helpful, hurtful. Certainly, improving everybody's safety on the road is helpful. So overall, whether your rates increase from it or something like that, if it's keeping everybody safer, it's certainly a good thing.
We have Mike, Sarah, and I generally like fairly regularly walk over to Starbucks in the morning. We kind of go over everything for the day. Yesterday, she wasn't here. I was walking by myself. I walked up to a car. The guy was sitting like exiting onto the highway to turn on. He's on his phone. I literally walked up to his window. The guy never saw him. Like he was so focused on his phone. I see him turn. His head didn't lift. Like, he looked for a second, right back to his phone. He's watching YouTube video. Like I could see it on his screen. And I'm like, should that be treated differently than someone like you who drives safely? That's not necessarily a negative.
The only way that was acceptable is if he was watching our last podcast. Just kidding.
He
It's
should be
never
listening instead of watching. Don't we have
acceptable.
that
Yeah, yeah, of course, of
on?
course. You don't need to see our faces. Just listen to our voices. Um, but yeah, I mean, just something interesting to think about.
It's an
Spiraling
interesting
off
thought.
of that a little bit, something that you do in your car a lot is listen to music. And a new headline that came up recently, Universal Music Group is selling roughly half of its 3% stake in Spotify in a deal worth 1.3, $1.5 billion. Because of a claw push by Taylor Swift in her 2018 contract, a portion of that payoff must now go directly to artists and can't be recouped by the labels. So the question is, how often are companies making deals that end up costing them billions later on down the road? Having them make this decision is having such a wide range impact on so many. Is this going to come back to bite them?
Mike, you want to go first? You want me to go first? Honestly?
No, you take this is your field.
Well, so I think it's twofold. Of course, you want to weigh the long term ramifications of any decision, but I also think, particularly with that whole Taylor Swift call it fiasco, right, where she sold the rights to the music and someone else bought. I think there's also, we're looking at, okay, here was the cost today. What we're not looking at is what value was added by making the deal back then until today. And from
Right.
a PR perspective, from a publicity perspective, from how many people downloaded Spotify because they made that deal to say, "Hey, we're going to be paying the artist," right? Or they, I'm not picking out Spotify. I'm saying like conceptually, you also have to look at the upside of the good publicity that came out of making deals like that, where the so-called, small people, in this case, the artists generally are not only hungry, but still, right, relative to the big corporation, how many people, went out of their way because of the good publicity, and did the company monetize that, right? And did they weigh that? Okay, and I'm guessing some really smart people did this. Said, okay, here's the upside of making this deal. Here's how much we're going to make. Yes, it'll cost us X down the road. but the gains definitely outweigh the losses. I'm hoping they did that calculation, but that's how I would view it
One would
if I'm
hope.
in that decision.
Yeah, I don't have like much of an opinion on this, but I will say, over the past few years that I've known Shai, I've seen more contracts than I can count,
That tracks. Yep.
and it really does come down to that fine print, and that like one sentence changes everything. And it's really crazy where before I'd get a DocuSign, I'm like, oh, I've got to go and sign it. Scroll all the way down, click to sign. Now it's like, all right, there's got to be something in here that they don't want me to find, So my inner conspiracy theorist kicks in, and then I'm just like going through, and I'm like, all right, hey, can you take a look at this? What am I giving up here? What am I losing? So it just seems like that this is one of those situations where one sentence in the contract just changed the entire course of how a company operates, right? So, but to what Shai is saying, I think it's going to be more beneficial for them, because I don't think they would have gotten here. It's you just got to change the course, and continue to make good decisions at like board level.
Yeah, it's really like that too on a lot of things. So, for example, say you have an employee and you give that employee a little bit of equity in your business because they're extremely loyal, right? And it's like, okay, people see you sold the company and, that employee got rich or that employee got a big check when you sold the company 10 years later. What people don't see was that employee went over the top and they were excessively loyal or worked extra hard. And not to say that that they maybe really made the sale, but they definitely impacted the success of the company along the way. And then they're entitled to the sale. You know, um, I was sitting with a guy. I don't know if he wants me to say his name, so I won't. But I was sitting with him last month, and he was telling me how, what's the cost of all the missed birthdays and holidays and, cruises that you didn't go on when all your friends were going while you were building your business. People only see the exits and people don't see what happened along the way. People don't see you were the one sacrificing when everybody else wasn't. And they tend to focus on the end result and not the what happened when that decision was made. So kind of tying that back to here, it's, when they made that decision, what was the upside to them? And by paying it now, did they really benefit to the tune of, a multiple of that? That's really I think that's the question. The question is, well, how did they benefit along the way to get to this valuation where they're able to sell, for $1.3 billion, such a small percent?
Right. No, that's a really good point. And especially the sacrifice that entrepreneurs and people in these positions make, missing out on family stuff and everything else to build their dreams and hope that it pays off.
I think that's a bigger topic. Maybe we should focus on that topic for one of our future podcasts. I think that's something I get
Yeah.
asked. Sure, Mike does also. It's okay. How do you balance the work life, particularly nowadays where, younger employees tend to want more of a work life balance than, people in the prior generation. And, they also want the upside. And it's not a right or wrong. It's a function of how do you balance that.
Yeah, for sure. And just like anything in life, the balancing act of it all is a challenge. And that's I think something that comes up a lot in the original Back to Business podcast when talking to entrepreneurs. It's a lot of that. There's a lot of grinding and hustling that goes on and you inevitably have to miss out on things. But moving on from Spotify, actually, question for you guys: are we Spotify or Apple Music guys? I'm a Spotify gal
And Apple,
personally.
yeah, I'm lazy, so Apple makes it very easy for me to just.
Okay, all right, fair. Shia,
I'm gonna be
tiebreaker.
the odd man out here. Neither. I don't.
Me
I don't have
neither.
music. I have YouTube. I think it's premium or whatever it's called. So I don't have commercials. But honestly, I don't listen to music much. I tend to listen to topics that interest me. Generally focus, but usually when I'm in the car, I'm on the phone. So I don't really listen to much at
Fair,
all.
fair. Except Back to Business, of course.
Well, now, yeah, the Back to Business is a podcast I've been listening to for a long time. Now that we have episodes more often, I'll have what to listen to in the car.
I'm
But I
gonna
do
see.
like that it's on YouTube because I wouldn't know where to find it otherwise.
I'm gonna see how many shameless plugs I can add into today's episode. So I think we're at two, maybe three.
I don't
But
think it's shameless. Take pride in it. It's the best podcast out there.
There you go. Number one on the charts.
Well,
Next topic. We're going to bring Israel into the mix. So Israel reportedly deployed its Iron Dome missile defense system along with personnel to operate it to the UAE during early stages of the conflict with Iran. So this is one of the first times the system has been used operationally outside of Israel, and it reflects a level of coordination between these countries that would have likely or would have been unlikely not long ago. So the question is, are we seeing a shift towards more cooperation in the region, even in the middle of the conflict that's ensuing? And what does that actually mean long term?
Mike, do you want to go first? You want me to?
Yeah. What I'll say to this is sometimes like this is one of those stories where a headline doesn't like tell the full story, right? So these are two countries historically would have not worked together. I think I know, um, but like this partnership is because they're both facing the same danger, right? So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, type of scenario now, but with the hopes that and with our Tents of Two Brothers organization, foundation that Shai and I have started, we hope that these countries do start becoming more friendly with each other, and going back to when the World Cup was in Qatar, uh, there's a lot of backlash. They had to open up the border for everyone, right? So there's a lot of Israeli journalists there, and I remember every time they mentioned that they were Israeli, the locals felt a certain kind of way, and then you could see that they kind of panicked a little bit. But now, as they're both starting to see like this regional enemy, right, or someone that wants to hurt not just Israel, but also an Arab country or anyone that gets in their way, it is nice and gives me a optimistic outlook on the ability of them to actually be able to work together. And then Israel giving the Iron Dome to another country is kind of like one of the best kept secrets, right? Was the Iron Dome shows that they're willing uh, to get to that part of the relationship, right? Unless there's something better and they're hiding it and they're just giving
That's the conspiracy
the
theory.
old technology to them. Yeah, I hate to throw a
Yeah.
conspiracy here for you. Something for you to bounce off of. But yeah, what do you guys think?
So I agree with Mike, but I think it's a lot more. I think it's huge. I think it's much much bigger than what Mike said, and I'll explain why. So taking a step back, first of all, it wasn't just Iron Dome; it was actually the Iron Beam also. So the Iron Beam is the laser technology that also shoots out missiles and drones specifically. And I think that kind of taking a step back, the Abraham Accords under the first Trump administration is what led to the initial um, reconciliation, we'll say, between there are a few different countries: the Bahrain, Morocco, UAE, the Emirates, and to me, it changed the complete trajectory of the Middle East for the next generation. I think there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we haven't seen to date, and the fact that now it's out in the public, but I think this has been going on for a while now, and the fact that Israel is willing to provide this to them, to me, shows a systemic change in how these countries are going to interact for the next generation. The If you go today to Dubai, there are more kosher restaurants in Dubai than there are in Chicago or in Michigan. I mean, the amount of Orthodox Jews walking around Dubai is mind blowing, and the reason for that is because Dubai, the Emirates in general, but not just the Emirates. You're starting to see this in Lebanon also, and we can jump into that topic in a second. It's a little more complex, but Dubai, the Emirates, Morocco, they're saying we don't want this extremism either in our country anymore. We don't want the next generation to be going through what the last generation went through. We want to diversify our economy, and partnering with Israel gives us the best opportunity to do that. And the amount of flights a day going between those two countries, it's mind-boggling. I mean, this is something that pre Abraham Accords wouldn't have been a pipe dream. Like, I would have never imagined in my lifetime that there would be, I don't know, what is it, 8 direct flights a day from Tel Aviv to Dubai? That's crazy. And we talk about it now like it's completely casual. Providing weapons to Dubai, the defensive weapons to Dubai, that's something that we would have dreamed of in our lifetime. So I think it's huge. I think it also is going to get the people, the next generation, who are maybe a little more skeptical of what the future holds. I think they're going to see that they can work together. On that note, Dubai, the Emirates recently, the UAE left OPEC. Was that on our agenda for today? Okay, so one
Got it.
yeah, so the big news was they exited OPEC. And part of the reason they exited OPEC was again will drive down fuel prices. Most people understand is that don't understand is OPEC actually controls the output and therefore dictates how much oil the world has for supply because they're the largest supplier. And the UAE leaving gives them the freedom to decide how much oil is going to hit the open market. And all of these things to me are huge positives. I see them as a huge change in the Middle East. I think if you go on the streets in Tel Aviv or the streets of Dubai, people see, okay, everything we were told growing up is not, is not the reality. The interactions, the business, the transactions, the amount of people flying back and forth and interacting with each other, it changes futures. I think the ripple effect is going to be huge. I think them providing the Iron Dome and the Iron Beam is really a huge shift in the moderate Arab countries' relationships with Israel and the United States going forward.
For sure. It's such a good point. And it's the misinformation, the lack of knowledge, or like the lack of wanting to investigate some of these topics. Like when you bring up how many flights go back and forth between Tel Aviv and Dubai, most people don't know that. They don't know about how much those countries are interacting, the number of kosher restaurants. Like I feel like if you pulled a few people off the street and, majority of them would not think that there was that level of coexistence happening.
Yeah, the first time Mike and I went to Tel Aviv together, we're standing in Tel Aviv, and from Tel Aviv to Jaffa is predominantly Muslim. Oh, probably 90% Muslim. And
Yeah.
and they're wearing the hijabs and the burqas. And I remember having the conversation. It's like, Mike with his conspiracies, did you plant these people here? Right? It's
We
like,
did. Like the supermarkets in North Korea. It's not.
and it's no, they live here, they're citizens, but most people don't know that 20% of Israel is Arab. 15 members of the Knesset are Muslim. Not just Arab, they're Muslims, and they get along, and everybody gets along, and they work together, and they live together. You see the one kind of flashpoint, or people highlight some extremist standing on a corner with a sign, but what people don't see is day to day there, everybody gets along. And I think the topic is a very important one. I think it's not about the Iron Dome. It's about a level of cooperation between two countries that in my lifetime I would have never ever dreamed actually coming true.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm so happy to see that on our agenda for today and really be able to intertwine it to the greater purpose for, why the three of us sit down and talk.
It's
Uh,
exactly it's
regular.
exactly what Friend for Two Brothers is geared to accomplish.
Yep,
Literally, that is what it's geared to accomplish. A perfect example of what one little thing can do. The ripple effect is huge.
for sure.
Yeah.
If you think
Um,
about it for a second, the amount of lives that Israel saved in the Emirates. If anyone ever stops and think about, like, do you ever think you would say that Israel saved probably hundreds, tens of thousands for sure from missiles and drones that were being shot into the Emirates from Iran? That's something that in the Emirates people are aware of now.
right.
Yeah. It's
Crazy.
this could really like change everything there. These are two small countries in the Middle East, right? Probably 22% of the entire land um in that area. But this is one way for that partnership to really build, just because like it's not because they suddenly all agree on the same thing, right? But but again, they're facing that same danger, and now when someone's got your back, it's not about your day one friend. It's about like who's really there for you. If you were to make it on a personal level, I've only known Shia for a few years, but I feel like I've known him my whole life. So just
Absolutely.
because I've known him for a short amount of time, relatively, doesn't make him less of a friend or an ally than someone that I've known since fifth grade.
I could say the same thing. I trust Mike more than I probably trust anyone else in my life. That's saying a lot, and I mean that genuinely. No, it's serious. But if you would have taken the two of us and said, "Hey, two of you guys are going to be as close as you are," I guarantee you, both of us would have said that that's just not realistic. Prior to getting to know each other, and once you cross that line, you find out you have a lot more in common than you do differences.
Yeah. And just to throw this out there, since we always throw a little bit of a snippet of how we met, uh, there was a part of me that feared he was going to try to settle into my season tickets and take them from me. So I have to be.
No, continue.
Uh,
Continue. No, let him finish there. Tell us more, Michael.
Give us a little more. Yeah, come on.
No, we'll get more in episode 4.
Breadcrumbs.
Where are we up to in the story, actually? I think so. So we told your version, your side of what happened. I don't think we told my side. Is it my turn to say what I said back?
I think you can say that. Yeah, it's not
We
time.
we want to roll this out little by little.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
cap it at like 10 words per episode of the story.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, I don't think it was Mike who was worried about having the seats taken. And I'll get to the why when I roll out the rest of the story. But let's just say his negotiating leverage based on his payment method was far superior to mine.
Intrigue for the listeners.
Exactly.
We'll stop right there.
Stop right there. No more. So last topic for today, on a darker note, is the White House Correspondents Dinner and the shooting that happened. This occurred just a few days ago, April 25th, 2026. There were, large media conglomerates, political leadership, public figures all together at the Washington Hilton. And I know you guys, have heard of what happened and probably know quite a bit about it. But the question here that I want to bring up is, when you concentrate that level of influence in one place, how do organizations actually think about risk, security, exposure? And I mean, this has been a common, I mean, there's been several incidents kind of similar over the last couple of years. So how do we do better?
I'll go first on this one. I guess the answer is I think there's a larger underlying issue than just how do you protect the attendees at the event. I think this comes down to social media, and I'm not a proponent of regulation, and I don't know the answer. It's something I think a lot about. How do you come up with some solution to the fact that social media has the ability to influence people who are clearly not in the right frame of mind, or they are in the right frame of mind and they're just so easily manipulated that you could convince people of anything. I mean, you look at it, there was a bunch of people going to a No Kings rally who were then celebrating King Charles, right? I'm not even sure what No Kings actually means, like, and I'm not sure anyone else can explain it, right? You have, like, I'm fine with people have very diverse view sets on a lot of different topics, but when you get into the details, most people are just chanting slogans without actually understanding what they're saying. And I think you have clearly a deranged individual who sees all this stuff online and says, "I'm going to solve this problem with violence." It's just not the answer. But I think on kind of getting into it a little deeper, it's what can we do to fight this misinformation? Because the stories that are being told to people and the things they believe are not even based on the true story. I don't know the answer. It's something I'd like to continue to focus on as we grow this podcast. Um, Mike and I address this often, with 10 to 2 Brothers, very similar. Like, a lot of the differences are just because of it's not differences of opinion. It's people who are just wrong about what's a clear fact to anyone with the knowledge. It's a lack of education. I think so. I think it's on us to educate people and prevent things like this from happening in the future.
Yeah, just to touch on your No Kings people. I think that they just, the king part is no talking and no thinking. And really, you're right. They're promoting No Kings, but then they're cheering for Kings or what. Um, but going back to the correspondence dinner shooting, how many movies have you guys seen where all of the heads of state are in one place and then just this big attack happens, right? And then the 80th person in line becomes the leader of the free world and all that. Like, there's so much of this out there in Hollywood, right? And like to what you said, when someone doesn't have the help that they need mentally, these are more than just movies or shows or jokes or memes to them. It becomes real. So we could blame just our culture for that. That promotes a lot of violence and killing, and it brings in millions and millions of dollars into these production companies, right? But what are we really doing? I mean, one of these days, these attacks are gonna be complete. We're seeing the start of them, right? We're seeing a presidential candidate get grazed by a bullet at a rally. We're seeing someone run into a place where there's a dinner with a lot of top heads of state there. I think it's more of a cultural issue, and we need to address the mental illnesses out there. This has been a talk for a long time. Yeah, I think over a decade that we've been talking about how can we fix the mental illness issue in the United States, and there's no solution for that. So I think it's only going to get worse, and we won't see any real movement or traction until something bad actually does happen, um, or another attack happens on U.S. soil, which I pray to God doesn't.
I think it just goes to show how important it is to invest in spreading truth. It's why we need to continue doing this. It's why we need to share the message to the people with larger platforms taking some responsibility for what they're saying. I think people, like, there has to be some way to hold people accountable. And I'm not saying regulate them. I'm not saying ban them, but at some point, maybe like it's crazy because the more radical, the more radical your comments, the more clicks you get, the more money you make. And it's almost like people are incentivized to just throw out these crazy concepts with no basis in fact, but with nothing supporting it, just because it'll get people to click on it, which in turn, deposits money in their bank account. And it's a broken system. And the fallout from that is that this guy believes it, right? And there are too many this guys out there. There are too many of those guys who say, no, no, it's true. Most people who click on it are just like, oh, I'm going to watch the train wreck, right? It's funny. But there's a few people, but when you have, 50 million people watching and 1% of that, are people who actually believe the conspiracy theories, that's a big number. It's a big number. And it's really terrifying because as these kind of radical, views get thrown out there by podcasters or just in general on social media, the amount of people believing it continues to rise. So I think the war for our future is going to be fighting misinformation.
Yeah.
For sure. And to your point, I mean, then the great debate about censorship and freedom of speech and all of that will be brought up. So it's just being louder, like people like us and putting podcasts out like this being louder than all of the misinformation and the lies and whatnot that other people are putting out there.
Yeah,
We're
it'll be an
pretty
interesting
excited.
topic for maybe a future week. Facebook lost a lawsuit where I think it was a teenager committed suicide. Um, and Facebook got sued, and it's a real kind of fundamental question. Where does the responsibility lie, right? I think ChatGPT has something similar now with the lady in Toronto. It was a ChatGPT or one of the AI platforms. I'm not sure which one it was, but I think that's something that we could delve into in a future episode. You know, where's the line between freedom of speech and yelling fire in a theater, right? And where's that line? There's no perfect answer, but I think right now with no regulation and no rules, we're seeing the results of that with people like this trying to storm, the Correspondents Dinner.
Right. And then you have prominent figures like Jimmy Kimmel, who makes a very insensitive remark on, on air, and you see what the repercussions could be from that. But, even if he got canceled, then you have everybody on the other side saying, well, there's freedom of speech. What happened to that? So it's two people on very different sides, or two groups on very different sides, arguing different things. And
Yeah, I think it just lies in getting people the right information. I really do. I think you need to have a voice on the other side, someone with a large platform and really that's the goal of Tentative Two Groups. I mean, that's exactly what it's for. We're not taking a stance on one side or another. We're just saying here are facts. You can make your own decisions based on that. You can have opinions based on that, but at least know the facts so you can make the right decision. That get educated. And then you can have a point of view, and people's point of views will differ, and that's fine.
for sure. Well, I think that's a good note to end on today. I do want to mention, I know we've talked a lot about Sense of Two Brothers in each episode, but we'll put in the show note captions, the website, so that any listeners can learn more about it. If you want to get involved, go on a future trip to Israel and see what's going on over there, and really be a part of Sense of Two Brothers, you can do so. So we'd love to have you.
Yeah, we should also touch on Firefly a little bit. I know we didn't get into that in this episode. We can get that in a future episode, but I think that's also
Yeah,
something very
for sure.
similar to Two Brothers, just kind of focused in a different area. And it really on the 10 Two Brothers side, it's Israel is going to Gaza, it's going to Lebanon, it's meeting with Jews, Christians, Arabs. It's hearing on one of our trips, Mike and I met with the head of the Druze community. Most people don't even know what that is. We could get into that maybe on another episode. And you say, okay, I want to hear on the ground from the people what is the reality, and then I could form an opinion. And I'll tell you, it's eye opening for all of us. It was eye opening for all of us. Continues to.
For sure. And that's the thing. Don't believe us just because of, do your research and just find out the truth. Like that's all we're aiming at here. That's the
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys.
Thank you. So, yeah, great
Another good
job
talk.
on moderating.
Thank you, Michael. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. You guys too.
We'll
All
catch
right.
you
Take care.
next week. Bye guys.
Bye. Guys.